Mason Clark had 3 rules for interstellar delivery. Never make eye contact with customs officials. Always keep your scanner charged. And under no circumstances should you sign anything you couldn't read. Today, he was about to break the 3rd rule with spectacular consequences. Final approach to Xeris. Please secure all personal items, announced the ship's AI as the battered cargo freighter shuddered into the planet's atmosphere. Mason tightened the straps on his delivery pack and adjusted his faded blue, universal parcel service cap, a relic from Earth's shipping history that he'd adopted as his personal brand. At 25, he was among the youngest independent contractors running the Outer Rim routes, a job that paid just enough to keep his ship fueled and his instant noodle supply stocked. The package tucked under his arm was small but heavy, a metal box sealed with diplomatic markers from the Terran embassy. His instructions were simple: deliver to the Xeris Central Administration Building, get a signature, and get out. Standard procedure for his 3 years as a courier. But nothing about Xeris looked standard as the ship descended through crimson clouds. The spaceport sprawled across an arid plateau, surrounded by towering structures that resembled the skeletal remains of ancient beasts. Landing pads swarmed with creatures of all conceivable anatomies, most at least a head taller than the average human. "Welcome to Xeris Spaceport," rasped a voice over the comms as they touched down. "Current local temperature, suitable for most carbon-based life forms. Oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere with trace elements of xenon. Visitors are reminded that gravity fluctuations are normal during the twin moons alignment." Mason stepped onto the boarding ramp and immediately felt lighter, then heavier, then lighter again, like being on a slow-motion elevator that couldn't decide which floor to stop at. The air smelled of metal and something sweet, yet alien, like cinnamon mixed with gasoline. "Customs to your left, trade services to your right," continued the automated message. "The Jar Empire welcomes all peaceful visitors. Violence outside designated areas will result in immediate conscription to the entertainment division." Mason navigated through the chaotic terminal, dodging porters, carrying impossibly balanced stacks of containers, and merchants hawking everything from oxygen supplements to authentic Earth artifacts. He noticed a rubber duck labeled as Sacred Terran Bathing Deity. According to his scanner, the administration building was a 15-minute walk northeast. He set off, package secure, trying to look purposeful as he consulted the holographic map projected from his wrist device. 3 wrong turns, and 40 minutes later, Mason found himself in a wide plaza dominated by a massive dome structure. Crimson banners hung from titanium spires, each emblazoned with crossed weapons, dripping stylized droplets, presumably blood, though the artistic rendering made it look almost beautiful. A line of diverse beings stretched from the dome's entrance. Some wore elaborate armor, others displayed scars like badges of honor. Many carried weapons that would have been illegal in 17 systems. Mason approached a bored-looking attendant, stationed at a side entrance, a hunched, gray-skinned being with 6 eyes, arranged in a perfect hexagon across its face. "Excuse me," Mason said, activating his universal translator. "I'm looking for the Central Administration Building. Package delivery?" The creature's eyes blinked in sequence before it responded in a voice like gravel being sorted. "Administration. Yes. Yes. Through here. All official business." Mason hesitated. The entrance didn't match his map reference, but his scanner was giving contradictory readings, likely interference from the dome's structure. After a moment's consideration, he followed the attendant through a service corridor that smelled strongly of disinfectant and something coppery. They emerged into a processing area filled with stations where various beings were being registered, scanned, and measured. The walls were decorated with holographic displays showing combat scenarios. In one, a massive reptilian creature tore through what looked like 3 opponents simultaneously. The audience's roar was muted, but still sent chills down Mason's spine. Wait, this isn't, Mason began, but was interrupted by a small cubic robot that zoomed to hover before him, about the size of a microwave, with a screen displaying a simplified face. It beeped cheerfully before speaking. Greetings, biological. I am Pix, processing information, xenotranslator, model, ZX419. How may I assist your participation today? Mason held up his package. There's been a mistake. I'm just delivering this to the administration building. Pix's screen flashed with scrolling text before responding. Processing. Analyzing intent. Yes. You wish to deliver your capabilities to the administration. Excellent career choice. Many beings find fulfillment in arena service. Arena? No. I'm with UPS, Universal Parcel Service. Mason clarified, pointing to his cap. Universal. Participant. Service. Pix translated, screen flashing with each word. Correct. Please proceed to registration for proper documentation of your Universal Participation Service. Before Mason could protest further, he was ushered to a registration kiosk. A holographic form hovered in the air, text scrolling in at least 7 different languages. None were English. I just need directions to the actual administration building, Mason insisted. This is correct location for all official entry, said the gray-skinned attendant, already turning away to help another arrival. Pix bobbed enthusiastically. Form requires signature to proceed. Standard entry agreement for all participants. Would you prefer fingerprint, retinal, or DNA authentication? Mason sighed. Look, can you just translate what this says? Processing request. Pix's screen swirled with colors. Form title. Enter to play in Grand Exhibition of Physical Prowess. Summary. Agreement to participate in sporting demonstration with provided equipment and housing. Standard compensation package applies upon completion of performance schedule. It sounded like some kind of athletic exhibition. Mason relaxed slightly. Perhaps this was just a cultural miscommunication. Maybe the administration building was part of this complex. He'd already wasted an hour, and his delivery window was closing. If I sign this, can I then get to the administration offices to deliver my package? Affirmative. Administration processes all participants post-registration, Pix chirped. With a resigned exhale, Mason pressed his thumb to the scanner. The form flashed green, and a confirmation tone sounded. Congratulations! New participant, Pix exclaimed. Please surrender all external items for safekeeping during your arena tenure. A mechanical arm extended from the kiosk, waiting expectantly for Mason's package and personal belongings. Wait, what do you mean arena tenure? I'm just delivering this package, Mason protested, clutching the diplomatic box tighter. 2 security guards materialized beside him, massive beings with exoskeletons that clicked as they moved. One extended a hand the size of Mason's head. All new fighters surrender possessions. Arena provides necessary equipment, it stated flatly. Fighters? I'm not... Mason's objection was cut short as the guards efficiently relieved him of his package, scanner, communication device, and delivery uniform. Within moments, he stood in nothing but his undergarments, the cool air raising goosebumps on his exposed skin. Pix hovered before him, seemingly oblivious to his distress. Translation update. Enter to play in Jar dialect actually means consent to combat for entertainment purposes. Linguistic nuance often lost in direct translation. Most fascinating. Mason's blood ran cold as realization dawned. The entertainment division, mentioned in the welcome message. The weapons on the banners. The beings lined up with their battle scars and armor. This is the blood arena, isn't it? He whispered. Correct, Pix confirmed cheerfully. Home of the most prestigious gladiatorial combat in 7 systems. You have volunteered for minimum term of 5 death matches, or until your inevitable demise, whichever comes first. Isn't that exciting? Mason's knees nearly buckled as the guards escorted him toward a descending platform. Through a massive archway ahead, he could see the gleaming sand of an enormous arena floor, surrounded by thousands of spectators. The crowd's roar vibrated through the stone beneath his feet. "There's been a mistake," he shouted, voice cracking. "I'm just a delivery guy. I didn't sign up for this." "Error in translation regrettable but contractually binding," Pix explained, bobbing alongside him as they descended. "Suggestion: develop combat strategy quickly. First match begins in approximately 15 minutes. Survival probability for untrained humans, approximately 3.2%. As the platform lowered him into the fighter's preparation area, a stone chamber filled with weapons, armor scraps, and the smell of fear, Mason Clark, who had only wanted to deliver a package and collect his fee, realized he had inadvertently signed up for the deadliest sporting event in the galaxy. And his first match was about to begin. Chapter 2. From Delivery, Boy to Armorless Knight. The preparation chamber buzzed with pre-battle activity. Alien gladiators tested weapons against practice dummies that screamed with disturbing realism. Others applied ritualistic paints or adjusted armor plates. No one paid much attention to the nearly naked human trembling in the corner, except for the small cubic robot hovering persistently by his side. "May I suggest the thorium spear? Popular choice for beginners," Pix chirped, gesturing toward a weapons rack with one extendable appendage. "Or perhaps the neural disruptor. 60% chance of triggering seizures in most vertebrate species." Mason pressed himself harder against the cold stone wall. "I don't want weapons. I want a lawyer. Or better yet, a spaceship. One-way ticket back to Earth. Please." "Legal representation unavailable until completion of contractual obligations," Pix responded cheerfully. "Spaceship acquisition possible upon achieving champion status. Only requires winning approximately 47 consecutive matches. Current house odds against human survival, 250 to 1. A thunderous roar from the arena above shook dust from the ceiling. Mason flinched. "What exactly am I fighting?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Pix's screen flickered through several images before settling on a hulking quadrupedal creature with bone plates protruding from every visible surface. First opponent, Gornax, juvenile bone crawler from Sigma Draconis. Primarily attacks with extendable jaw and armored tail. Carapace resistant to most puncture weapons. Vulnerable areas include... "Wait, that's a juvenile?" Mason interrupted, eyes widening at the image of a creature that looked bigger than a rhino. "Indeed. Adults typically 3 times larger. Juvenile selected for introductory match as gesture of arena hospitality." "How thoughtful," Mason muttered. He scanned the preparation room desperately. Most of the weapons looked too heavy for him to wield effectively. The armor pieces were designed for anatomies far different from human proportions. His attention fell on his delivery bag, which had been carelessly tossed onto a pile of confiscated items. If he could just reach it. 30 seconds to combat initiation," announced a booming voice throughout the chamber. Various gladiators began moving toward the arena entrance, some roaring battle cries, others moving with silent, predatory grace. Mason lunged for his bag, rummaging frantically through its contents. His fingers closed around a small canister that brought a flicker of hope. "Ghost Pepper Emergency Spray for Dangerous Encounters," read the label. A gift from his cousin who worked in Earth security, meant as a joke for his space travels. The ingredients listed capsaicin concentrate that would make military-grade pepper spray feel like a gentle mist by comparison. "Unauthorized equipment prohibited," buzzed a security drone, hovering toward him. "It's just a ritual war paint," Mason improvised, quickly stuffing the canister into his underwear, the only clothing they'd allowed him to keep. The drone scanned him, then moved on, apparently satisfied. "Next combatant, Terran male, Designation M427. The announcement echoed through the chamber. "That's you," Pix bobbed excitedly. "Customary to approach arena entrance with confidence. Audience appreciates theatrical displays of bravado." "I bet they do," Mason mumbled, as a mechanized platform began to rise beneath his feet, carrying him upward toward the blinding lights of the arena floor. The roar of the crowd crashed over him like a physical wave. The arena was vast, at least the size of 3 football fields. Its floor, covered in blue-tinted sand that sparkled unnaturally under multiple suns. Tiered seating rose in every direction, filled with thousands of spectators of countless species. Hovering cameras zipped through the air, capturing every angle of the impending slaughter. "Citizens of the glorious Jar Empire," boomed an announcer's voice. "Today's entertainment continues with an unlikely challenger, a fragile Terran who has volunteered for glory." "I didn't volunteer," Mason shouted, but his voice was lost in the crowd's jeers and laughter. "Facing the undefeated juvenile Gornex. Place your bets now." At the opposite end of the arena, a massive gate rose. The creature that emerged moved with surprising speed for its bulk, its bone plates scraping against each other with a sound like knives being sharpened. Its jaw extended, revealing row upon row of needle-like teeth. Mason backed away, heart hammering in his chest. The crowd's excitement intensified at his obvious fear. "Combat begins in 3, 2, 1. A horn blasted. The Gornax charged. Mason had exactly one advantage: agility. He dove to the side as the creature barreled past, its tail whipping around in a follow-up attack that narrowly missed his head. The crowd booed his evasion. "Stand and fight! Terran worm!" someone shouted from the stands. The Gornax skidded to a halt, recalibrating its attack. Mason used the momentary reprieve to assess his surroundings. The arena offered no cover, no weapons, nothing but open space and certain death. His hand touched the pepper spray canister in his underwear. One chance. As the creature charged again, Mason waited until the last possible second before diving, not away, but toward it, rolling underneath its massive body. The maneuver surprised both the Gornax and the audience, drawing confused murmurs. While under the beast, Mason pulled out his canister and sprayed its entire contents upward, aiming for what he hoped was the creature's underbelly, the only part not covered by bone plates. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The Gornax released a screech that shattered several light fixtures. It reared up on its hind legs, exposing the bright red irritation spreading across its soft underside. Mason scrambled away as the creature began thrashing wildly, rolling in the sand in a desperate attempt to relieve the burning sensation. "What is this?" the announcer exclaimed. "The Terran appears to have deployed some kind of chemical weapon." The Gornax's movements became increasingly erratic. It charged blindly into the arena wall, stunning itself, before it could recover. Mason, acting on pure adrenaline, grabbed one of its smaller tail spikes that had broken off during the impact and drove it into the creature's exposed eye. The Gornax collapsed, twitching. The arena fell silent. Then, from somewhere in the upper tiers, a single spectator began to applaud. Others joined, slowly at first, then building to a thunderous ovation. "Unprecedented!" the announcer boomed. "The Terran delivers victory through—" Whatever that was, Mason stood trembling beside the fallen creature, covered in blue sand and sweat, unable to believe he'd survived. Later, in the fighters' quarters, slightly more comfortable than the preparation room, but still essentially a prison cell, Mason sat on a thin cot, staring at the wall. Pix hovered nearby, screen displaying what passed for excitement in its programming. Magnificent performance. Entertainment value exceeded expectations by 342%, the robot enthused. Especially enjoyed surprise tactic with red spray. What do humans call this weapon? Hot sauce, Basically, Mason sighed. I don't suppose that counts as all 5 matches. 1 down, 4 to go, right? Pix's screen showed what might have been embarrassment. About that, management has reclassified your status due to unexpected victory. You are now categorized as specialty combatant rather than disposable novice. New contract terms include minimum of 10 matches or championship qualification. They can't just change the deal, Mason protested. Standard Clause 7.3. Management reserves right to adjust contractual obligations based on entertainment value and survival probability. Your victory generated significant betting losses. Recoupment required. Mason groaned and flopped back on the cot. Perfect. What's next? 2 Gornaxes? 3. Next opponents scheduled for tomorrow. The twinned devastators of Proxima Centauri. Pix displayed an image of 2 humanoid figures, each with 6 arms rippling with muscle. Professional gladiators with 22 consecutive victories. I'm dead, Mason muttered. Current survival odds improved to 120 to 1. Pix offered helpfully. Also, this might improve morale. The robot projected a holographic display showing what appeared to be arena highlights. Mason was stunned to see himself, specifically, his victory over the Gornax, edited to emphasize his cleverness rather than his terror. These clips are being shared across restricted networks, Pix explained. Quite popular among lower-tier citizens and off-worlders. Hashtag Delivery Boy Death Dealer, trending in 3 sectors. You're recording my fights and leaking them? Technically, against regulations, Pix admitted, lowering its volume. But calculated 87% probability that increased public interest improves your survival chances. Management less likely to execute popular attractions. Mason wasn't sure whether to thank the robot or deactivate it. The next day arrived too quickly. The twin devastators lived up to their name, 12 arms between them, each wielding a different weapon. They entered the arena to thunderous applause, their green skin glistening with some kind of ritual oil. Mason had nothing but his underwear, his wits, and, thanks to a sympathetic maintenance drone that Pix had somehow bribed, his old delivery boots. They were standard issue with one special modification: retractable wheels for quick package deliveries in urban environments, with small propulsion jets for tight maneuvers. After yesterday's surprising upset, our Terran challenger faces professional combatants, the announcer proclaimed. Will his luck hold? Unlikely. The twins attacked in perfect coordination, one going high while the other went low. Mason activated his boots and shot backward just in time, the wheels extending as microjets flared. The crowd gasped at his sudden burst of speed. "The Terran appears to have rocket feet," the announcer exclaimed. "Most unusual." Mason zoomed around the arena perimeter, staying just ahead of his pursuers. The boots weren't designed for extended use. Their battery would die in minutes. He needed a plan. As he rounded a corner, an idea struck. He cut his jets and skidded to a halt, allowing the twins to think they'd cornered him. As they closed in, weapons raised, Mason dropped to the ground and activated maximum thrust, shooting between their legs. The maneuver startled them, but more importantly, the jet exhaust ignited the oil covering their bodies. Not enough to cause serious harm, but sufficient to create a spectacular distraction as they slapped at the small flames dancing across their skin. While they were occupied, Mason circled behind and used his wheels to trip one twin, sending him crashing into his brother. 12 arms meant 12 opportunities for weapons to tangle. In the confusion, one twin accidentally embedded an axe in his brother's shoulder. The injured twin howled, lashing out reflexively and catching his brother across the face with a spiked gauntlet. Within seconds, they were fighting each other more than Mason. Mason seized the opportunity. He grabbed a fallen dagger and, using his jets for a boost, launched himself onto the back of the larger twin. One precise strike to a nerve cluster Pix had identified during a pre-match briefing, and the giant collapsed, temporarily paralyzed. The remaining twin, enraged by his brother's defeat, charged Mason with all 6 arms swinging. Mason waited until the last second, then activated his boots and shot straight up, causing the twin to crash into the arena wall. A quick kick to the head with his jet-powered heel finished the job. Silence fell, then erupted into wild cheering. Even the announcer seemed at a loss for words. In the aftermath, Mason's fame grew exponentially. Pix showed him underground forums where fans dissected his techniques, created artwork of the rocket-heeled Terran, and even started wearing makeshift delivery caps in tribute. "Your third match scheduled for tomorrow," Pix informed him that evening. "Opponent identity classified. Special event status granted." "What does that mean?" Mason asked, massaging his aching muscles. "Means important spectators attending. Warden Kargath himself will observe." "Who's Warden Kargath?" Pix displayed an image of a massive 4-horned humanoid with skin like blackened steel. "Arena Master and High Administrator of Entertainment Division. Reports directly to Imperial Command." Mason studied the imposing figure. "He looks friendly." "Responsible for execution of 347 gladiators who underperformed," Pix replied cheerfully. "But your entertainment metrics exceed all projections. Current fan approval rating, 78% positive." "What happens if I win tomorrow?" Mason asked, surprising himself with a question. 3 days ago, he'd been thinking only of escape. Now, some part of him was contemplating victory. Pix's screen flickered thoughtfully. "Third consecutive victory by previously unknown combatant triggers elevation protocol. Special privileges granted. Possible pathway to freedom if momentum continues." Freedom. The word hung in the air like a distant star. "Then, I guess I'd better win," Mason said quietly, staring at his reflection in Pix's metallic surface. The face looking back at him was already changing. Harder, more determined, less delivery boy, more survivor. What he didn't know was that his next opponent would change everything. Chapter 3. Bride by Blade. By the morning of his third match, Mason's cell had been upgraded. No longer the bare stone cubicle of common fighters. His new quarters featured actual furniture, running water, and a viewing screen. His fame had earned him these small luxuries, along with increased security. 3 guards now monitored his door instead of 1. "Today's match preparation protocol differs significantly," Pix announced, zooming into the room with unusual excitement. The little robot screen displayed a series of rapidly shifting emojis. "Special ceremonial attire provided." 2 attendants followed, carrying what appeared to be lightweight armor, a chestplate of iridescent blue metal, matching greaves, and a helmet topped with a stylized flame crest. "I don't understand," Mason said as they began fitting him with the gear. "What's different about today?" "Exhibition match classification," Pix explained. "Reserved for special occasions when Imperial dignitaries attend. Higher production value, enhanced audience experience." "And deadlier opponents, I'm guessing," Mason sighed. Pix's screen flickered nervously. "Opponent data classified. Unusual security protocols implemented." That didn't sound good. As the attendants finished strapping him into the unfamiliar armor, Mason tested his mobility. The material was surprisingly light and flexible, contouring to his movements while still providing protection. Too bad it likely wouldn't matter against whatever nightmare they'd matched him with today. "Any advice?" Mason asked Pix quietly, as they were escorted toward the arena. The robot hesitated, then lowered its volume to a near whisper. "Survival analysis suggests focusing on defensive tactics initially. Observe opponent patterns before committing to offensive strategy. Also, prepare for unexpected developments." "That's cryptic." Some information restricted even from translator units, Pix replied. But arena demographics show unusual betting patterns. High-ranking officials placing substantial wagers on various outcome permutations beyond simple victory-defeat binary. Before Mason could press for clarification, they arrived at the arena lift. Unlike previous matches, the platform was decorated with ornate symbols and surrounded by ceremonial guards bearing energy staffs. The atmosphere felt less like a gladiatorial contest and more like some sort of ritual. The lift began to rise, and Pix quickly added, "Whatever happens, remember that not all combat is resolved through death." Then, Mason was alone, ascending toward the roar of an audience that sounded twice as large as before. The arena had been transformed. Gone was the simple sand floor. In its place, a complex terraced battlefield with multiple levels, strategic obstacles, and what appeared to be triggered traps. Floating lights cast dramatic shadows across the scene, and massive screens displayed his image to the frenzied crowd. "Citizens of the glorious Jar Empire," the announcer's voice reverberated with even more pomp than usual. "Honored guests from the 7 allied systems, today we witness a truly exceptional contest." The audience's roar intensified. Mason spotted a luxury box where several imposing figures sat watching. In the center, unmistakable with his 4 horns and black metallic skin, sat Warden Kargath. Even from a distance, Mason could feel the arena master's cold evaluation. The unexpected Terran sensation, victor of 2 impossible matches, faces his greatest challenge. A spotlight focused on Mason, and he tried not to squint or look as terrified as he felt. On the screens, his expression appeared determined, almost heroic. The Pix-created myth of the fearless human gladiator had taken on a life of its own. And now, for the first time in 3 cycles, direct from the Imperial training grounds, the undefeated shadow of Jar, the veiled vanquisher. A platform opposite Mason began to rise. The figure standing upon it was humanoid, but taller than an average human, clad in obsidian armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. A helm concealed their features, with only glowing violet eyes visible through the visor. They carried dual crescent blades that hummed with energy. The scourge of the outer territories. Death's shadow. The crowd erupted in a frenzy that bordered on religious ecstasy. Mason realized he was facing some kind of arena legend, and that his survival streak was about to end spectacularly. "Combatants, prepare. This exhibition follows ancient rules of honorable engagement." A gong sounded, deep and resonant. Mason's opponent stepped forward with liquid grace, weapons glinting in the arena lights, not charging, but advancing methodically, evaluating. Mason took a defensive stance, trying to recall everything he'd learned from the arena training simulations he'd been allowed to access. The screens captured his poised readiness, causing excited murmurs from the crowd. They were expecting a show, not a slaughter. The first attack came with blinding speed, a feint followed by a sweeping low strike that would have severed Mason's legs if he hadn't jumped at the last second. He rolled away, barely avoiding the follow-up slash. His opponent was testing him. Mason realized, playing with him. The crowd cheered at the exchange, appreciating the dance even as they anticipated its bloody conclusion. For 10 minutes, that felt like hours. Mason managed to survive through a combination of desperate evasion and the protective armor. He landed no meaningful counterattacks, but his continued survival was victory enough. Each near miss drew gasps and cheers from the increasingly engaged audience. "The Terran displays remarkable resilience," the announcer proclaimed. "But Death's shadow is merely warming up." As if triggered by these words, his opponent increased the intensity. The dual blades became a hurricane of lethal edges. Mason felt a sharp sting as one blade sliced across his arm. Not deep, but enough to draw blood. Another cut across his thigh. They were precisely placed to wound, but not incapacitate. He was being dissected, piece by piece. Desperation triggered inspiration. Mason activated the microjets in his boots, which he'd been allowed to keep as part of his signature style, and shot straight up, higher than his opponent anticipated. He landed on one of the upper terraces, buying precious seconds to catch his breath. The screens showed his blood-streaked armor, his determined expression, and the purple eyes of his pursuer as they calculated their next move. The audience was completely captivated. His opponent leapt with inhuman agility, landing just meters away. As they circled each other on the narrow terrace, something changed in the warrior's stance, a subtle shift that Mason couldn't quite interpret. "Impressive endurance," said a voice from behind the black helm, surprisingly melodic despite its menacing tone. "Most opponents fall within 2 minutes." "I'm not most opponents," Mason replied, trying to sound confident rather than exhausted. "I'm just a delivery guy who signed the wrong form." A sound emerged from the helm that might have been a laugh. "Is that the story you tell? Interesting." Without warning, the warrior attacked again, driving Mason back toward the edge. One blade knocked his legs out from under him, sending him crashing onto his back. Before he could rise, a crescent blade pressed against his throat, the edge humming with energy that made his skin tingle. The crowd fell silent, anticipating the kill. "Any last words, Terran?" asked the modulated voice, loud enough for nearby audio pickups to broadcast to the audience. Mason looked up at the glowing violet eyes behind the visor. "I never wanted to be here. I never wanted to kill anyone. I just wanted to deliver my package and go home." Something in those eyes changed. A flicker of... what? Recognition? Approval? Then everything changed. In a move that stunned the entire arena, the black-armored warrior withdrew the blade and stepped back. With ceremonial precision, they placed both weapons on the ground and, most shocking of all, knelt on one knee before Mason. The crowd erupted in confusion. Gasps and shouts echoed throughout the arena. On the screens, Mason's bewildered expression mirrored the audience's reaction. "What are you doing?" he whispered. "Claiming my right under the ancient code of Jar," replied the warrior, reaching up to remove their helmet. Cascading silver-blue hair framed a face of alien beauty, skin the color of pale amethyst, high cheekbones, and those striking violet eyes, now visible without the helm's filter. Unmistakably female, with an aristocratic bearing that commanded attention. "I am Leora, royal bloodline of House Jar," she announced, her voice now clear and carrying across the suddenly silent arena. "By the laws of our ancestors, I invoke the right of selection through combat victory." "Unprecedented!" the announcer's voice broke through the stunned silence. "The ancient right of selection has been invoked." In the luxury box, Warden Kargath had risen to his feet, his expression a mask of barely controlled fury. "What's happening?" Mason asked, still frozen in place. "You defeated me in honorable combat," Leora explained, her eyes never leaving his. "By the oldest laws of our empire, this grants you the right to claim me as your bride. Or more accurately," a subtle smile curved her lips, "it grants me the right to claim you." "Bride?" Mason choked. The crowd's reaction transformed from confusion to excitement. Chants began to rise from different sections of the arena. On the screens, Mason's dumbfounded expression was juxtaposed with Leora's serene confidence. "The law also stipulates," she continued, raising her voice to ensure it carried, "that the victor may request the freedom gift, liberty for 1,000 slaves of their choosing, as a wedding present." This announcement sent shockwaves through the arena. In the luxury box, Kargath was now engaged in a heated argument with several official-looking figures. Guards began moving toward the terrace where Mason and Leora knelt, but hesitated, awaiting orders. "Citizens!" The announcer's voice held a note of panic. "A brief intermission while the ancient protocols are verified." Leora leaned closer to Mason, speaking quickly and quietly. "Say yes. This may be the only chance for both of us." "I don't understand what's happening," Mason whispered back. "You will. But now you must accept. The crowd is with us. Kargath cannot deny the ancient laws without risking his position." Mason looked out at the audience. What had begun as confusion had transformed into something like celebration. Spectators were on their feet, many chanting what must have been traditional wedding calls. Even the guards seemed uncertain, caught between Kargath's obvious rage and the crowd's enthusiasm. In the midst of the chaos, Mason noticed something odd. Pockets of spectators in the lower tiers, those who would normally be slaves or low-status citizens, were watching with an intensity that went beyond mere entertainment. Some had tears streaming down their faces. Others clutched small tokens that glinted with the same blue-silver as Leora's hair. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than a strange arena custom. "Do you accept the selection?" Leora pressed, urgency in her voice. Mason made a decision. "I accept." The words were picked up by the audio system and broadcast throughout the arena. The crowd erupted in jubilation. On the main screen, Leora's face broke into a genuine smile that transformed her from intimidating warrior to radiant bride-to-be. In the luxury box, Warden Kargath slowly sat down, his four horns seeming to pulse with suppressed rage. But he made a gesture of acquiescence to the officials beside him. "The ancient rite is confirmed," the announcer proclaimed, voice now infused with ceremonial gravity. "Prepare for the union of victor and chosen. Prepare for the bestowing of the freedom gift." Guards approached, but now as escorts rather than captors. As Mason was helped to his feet, still dazed by the turn of events, Leora caught his eye and mouthed two words: "Trust me." Then, they were being led from the arena floor amidst thunderous applause, flower-like objects thrown from the stands, and the unmistakable feeling that whatever game was being played, Mason had just become a central piece on the board. As they passed near Kargath's box, Mason caught the warden's cold stare. The message was clear. This unexpected development might follow some ancient law, but it had made Mason an enemy of the most dangerous man in the arena. What Mason couldn't know was that becoming the accidental bridegroom to a warrior princess was only the beginning of how his life was about to change. Chapter 4: Uprising in the Sandstorm. The honeymoon suite was nothing more than a lavishly decorated prison. Silk tapestries covered stone walls that were still, undeniably, walls of a cell. Crystal fixtures illuminated a space designed to appear luxurious, while concealing multiple surveillance devices. The bed, large enough for 3 humans, was soft. But Mason hadn't slept more than minutes at a time since the ceremony 2 days ago. The wedding itself had been a blur of alien rituals, ceremonial chants, and the constant, palpable tension between the crowd's enthusiasm and the officials' barely concealed hostility. Mason and Leora had been paraded through the arena in traditional Jar wedding attire, his resembling ornate, gladiatorial armor, hers a blend of warrior's garb and regal finery. They had drunk from the same chalice, their wrists briefly bound with silver cord, and proclamations had been made in ancient languages that Pix struggled to translate. Through it all, Leora had maintained her serene, confident demeanor, squeezing Mason's hand at key moments to prompt his responses. She played the role of besotted bride with such conviction that even Mason sometimes forgot it was all, what, a ruse? A political maneuver? He still wasn't sure. Now he paced the confines of their honeymoon suite, casting occasional glances at Leora, who sat cross-legged on a meditation cushion, eyes closed, seemingly at peace. "Are you planning to explain any of this?" he finally asked, keeping his voice low. "Like why a princess of the empire decided to marry a delivery guy who accidentally became a gladiator?" Leora opened her eyes, violet irises focusing on him with unnerving intensity. "The surveillance systems have been temporarily compromised. We can speak freely, but not for long." She rose with fluid grace and approached, stopping closer than was comfortable for casual conversation. To any watchers, it would appear an intimate moment between newlyweds. "I did not choose you randomly, Mason Clark," she said softly. "You were the missing piece, a human with courage, adaptability, and most importantly, Terran genetic markers. You knew who I was before the fight?" A smile touched her lips. "That package you were so determined to deliver, I arranged for it to be sent. I needed to bring a human with specific characteristics to Xeris, and traditional recruitment methods would have raised suspicions." Mason's mind raced. "You set me up, got me thrown into the arena to die?" "To survive," she corrected. "I studied your profile extensively. Your adaptive thinking, your survival instinct, these weren't coincidences. You were selected because you had the highest probability of staying alive until I could arrange our match." "But why? What could possibly be worth?" A subtle shift in the room's ambient lighting caught Leora's attention. "Security protocols resetting. We have less than an hour before they collect us for the freedom ceremony." The 1,000 slaves, Mason remembered. That was real. Very real, and very important. Leora moved to what appeared to be a decorative panel in the wall. With precise movements, she pressed a sequence of points, causing the panel to slide aside, revealing a hidden compartment. "The freedom gift is more than tradition. It's our opportunity." From the compartment, she withdrew several items: a small metallic cube that resembled Pix, folded garments of nondescript brown, and what looked like ancient artifacts, stone tablets inscribed with symbols that glowed faintly blue. "The empire of my ancestors was not always built on blood and slavery," Leora said, her voice taking on a different quality, less the warrior princess, more the passionate revolutionary. "For millennia, we were explorers, scientists, philosophers. The arena culture is relatively recent, only 8 generations, brought by usurpers who twisted our ways." "And you want to, what, restore the old regime?" "I want to end the suffering." Her expression hardened. "The 1,000 slaves we free today are carefully selected. Leaders, technicians, those with influence among their people. Once freed, they will activate sleeper cells that have been positioned throughout the empire for years." Mason stared at her, reality finally dawning. "This isn't just about freeing 1,000 people. This is a revolution." "Precisely. And you, Mason Clark, are the key that unlocks everything." A soft chime sounded as a portion of the floor slid away, revealing a small platform rising into the room. Atop it stood Pix, looking somewhat battered but operational. "Infiltration successful," the robot announced, volume tactfully reduced. "Security systems bypassed as requested. Extraction pathway secured. Freedom ceremony preparations proceeding according to timeline." Leora nodded approvingly. "Excellent work, Pix." Mason looked between them. "You two know each other?" "Pix has been my most trusted operative for 3 years, Leora explained. "Translator units are overlooked, underestimated, perfect for gathering intelligence and manipulating systems from within. I served as intermediary between Princess Leora and Resistance Network," Pix elaborated, screen displaying a simplified map of what appeared to be underground passages. "Also responsible for ensuring your survival until selection ceremony. Apologies for not disclosing full operational parameters earlier. Mason sat heavily on the edge of the bed. So this whole time, the arena, the fights, the wedding, it was all planned. Not the specifics, Leora said, placing a hand on his shoulder. We created the opportunity, but your victories were your own. Your methods were unexpected and quite impressive. But why me? Why do you need a human specifically? Leora held up one of the stone tablets. Symbols crawled across its surface like living things, responding to her touch. Because of these, the artifacts of my true ancestors, not the butchers who rule now. They respond only to certain genetic signatures, and the closest match in 7 systems is human. Specifically, humans with a rare gene sequence that appears in less than 1% of your population. And I have this gene. Your genetic profile was in the Terran Embassy database. When we identified you as a match, I arranged for the package delivery that would bring you here. Mason's head was spinning. So what happens now? Now, Leora said, pressing the tablet into his hands. We use the freedom ceremony as cover to access the catacombs beneath the arena. There lies the technology that can disable the Empire's weapons and defense systems. Technology only you can activate. The tablet warmed in Mason's hands, the symbols rearranging themselves, somehow becoming almost readable despite being in no language he recognized. And if I refuse? He asked. Though he already knew his answer. Leora's expression softened. Then I miscalculated badly. But I don't think I did. You've seen the arena. You've witnessed the suffering. I believe you care. Mason Clark, delivery man from Earth. I believe you care enough to help end this. Their eyes held for a long moment, in hers. Mason saw something beyond the calculated revolutionary, vulnerability, hope. Perhaps even something more personal than politics. I'll help, he said finally. But I want your word that when this is over, I get a ship home. You have it, she promised, though something flickered across her face that Mason couldn't quite interpret. Pix interrupted, screen flashing with urgency. Security override failing. Guards approaching. Must resume appearances. Leora quickly returned the artifacts to their hiding place, keeping only one small tablet, which she slipped into Mason's ceremonial robe pocket. Keep this with you. When we reach the ancient chamber, you'll know what to do. As the door mechanisms began to activate, Leora pulled Mason into an embrace that would appear romantic to any observers. Against his ear, she whispered, whatever happens next, remember that freedom sometimes requires sacrifice. The doors slid open to reveal 4 Imperial guards in ceremonial armor, led by a tall, stern figure Mason recognized as one of Warden Kargath's direct subordinates. The freedom ceremony awaits, the leader announced with barely disguised contempt. The selected slaves have been gathered. As they were escorted through corridors of increasing grandeur, Mason noted subtle changes from his previous journeys through the complex. Where before, there had been only guards and officials. Now, there were workers, slaves, cleaning, carrying, maintaining. And in their eyes, as they caught glimpses of Leora and him passing, he saw something he hadn't noticed before. Hope. The ceremony would take place in a smaller arena adjacent to the main fighting grounds. As they approached, Mason could hear the murmur of a crowd, not the bloodthirsty roar of spectators, but the hushed anticipation of people witnessing a rare event. Follow my lead, Leora murmured. When I give the signal, be ready to run. They emerged onto a raised platform overlooking a circular space, where 1,000 beings of various species stood in ordered rows. Despite their diverse appearances, they shared one common feature. Each wore a collar of dull metal that contrasted with their simple white garments. Warden Kargath stood on a higher dais, his 4 horns adorned with ceremonial rings. His expression, a masterpiece of political artifice, maintaining the appearance of honoring tradition while radiating barely contained fury. "The Freedom Gift is a sacred tradition of the Jar Empire," he proclaimed, voice carrying without apparent effort. "Today, as ordained by the ancient laws, 1,000 slaves receive this rare blessing in honor of the Selection Union." The ceremony proceeded with agonizing slowness. Ritual words spoken, symbolic keys presented, representatives from each group of slaves brought forward to receive tokens of freedom. Throughout, Mason felt the weight of the tablet in his pocket and the weight of Leora's plan on his shoulders. At precisely the moment when Kargath raised the ceremonial freedom scepter, a gesture that would officially release the collars, Leora squeezed Mason's hand 3 times in rapid succession. Several things happened simultaneously. The slave collars deactivated, but instead of simply releasing, they transformed, the dull metal breaking apart and reforming into small communication devices that attached to each freed person's wrist. Pix, who had been hovering innocuously nearby, suddenly projected an intense light pattern that disrupted the security systems. And, most dramatically, from within the crowd of newly freed slaves, small devices were activated that created a swirling, blinding sandstorm inside the ceremonial arena. "Now!" Leora shouted, pulling Mason toward a section of floor that had opened beneath where they stood. As they dropped into darkness, Mason caught a glimpse of chaos above. Guards struggling to see through the artificial storm, freed slaves moving with practiced precision rather than panic, and Warden Kargath's face contorted with realization and rage. They landed on a cushioned platform in a tunnel bathed in ancient blue light. Around them, selected members of the freed slaves were already gathering, many shedding their simple garments to reveal combat gear underneath. "Phase 1 complete," announced a tall, scarred individual whom Leora greeted with a warrior's clasp of forearms. "Diversion forces deployed. Primary targets acquired." "Excellent, Koram," Leora replied. "Begin Phase 2. We have 18 minutes to reach the core chamber." As they moved swiftly through the tunnels, clearly part of some ancient structure that predated the arena above, Mason noticed something symbolic happening among the revolutionaries. They were tearing strips from their white freedom garments and binding them around their upper arms. The fabric, smeared with dust and in some cases blood from their escape, transformed from symbols of submission into badges of rebellion, white stained red. "We've planned this for years," Leora explained as they ran. "Each freed person has a role. Some create diversions, others secure escape routes. Many will free additional slaves from the lower levels." "And us?" Mason asked, clutching the tablet that grew warmer with each step deeper into the complex. "We're heading for the heart of it all." Her expression was grim but determined. "The technological core that powers not just the arena, but the entire control system of the Empire." Pix zoomed ahead, projecting a map of their route. Ancient chamber located exactly as historical records indicated. Energy signatures increasing. System appears dormant but functional. As they descended through layers of increasingly ancient architecture, Mason felt the tablet in his hands pulsing like a heartbeat. The symbols had rearranged again, now forming patterns that seemed to match markings on the walls around them. "It's responding to the environment," he observed. "And to you," Leora said. "The connection grows stronger as we approach the chamber. Only one with the compatible genetic signature can safely activate the core." They reached an enormous door, covered in the same flowing symbols as the tablet. Mason didn't need instructions. He simply placed the tablet against the center of the door. The symbols aligned, glowed bright blue, and the massive door slid open with a sound like a final breath held for centuries. Inside, was a chamber that defied the brutality of the arena above. Elegant architecture curved around a central platform, where a sphere of swirling blue energy hovered, suspended in a field of light. The technology was clearly ancient, yet somehow felt more advanced than anything in the modern empire. "The true heart of Jar," Leora whispered with reverence. "Not the arena or the palace, but this, the harmony core created by my ancestors, corrupted and hidden away when the usurpers took power." Mason approached the sphere, drawn by an inexplicable connection. The symbols from the tablet now appeared in the air around him, responding to his presence. "What am I supposed to do?" he asked. "Place your hands on the core," Leora instructed. "Your genetic signature will reactivate the original programming, replacing the corruption with the true purpose of the technology." As Mason reached toward the sphere, alarms suddenly blared throughout the chamber. On a communication panel near Leora, images appeared showing armed forces storming through the tunnels, led by Warden Kargath himself. "They've tracked us faster than anticipated," Leora said, her voice tight. "We need to hurry." Mason hesitated, looking back at her. "What exactly will this do? You said disable weapons. But what else?" For the first time, Leora's confidence wavered. "It will reset the entire technological infrastructure of the Empire. Some systems will fail. There will be casualties." "Civilian casualties?" "Primarily among the ruling class whose implants connect directly to the corrupted system," she admitted. "But the alternative is generations more of slavery and arena deaths." Mason's hands hovered near the sphere. The moral weight of the decision pressed on him like a physical force. In the distance, they could hear the sounds of fighting as the revolution met Kargath's forces. "Trust me," Leora said, echoing her words from the arena. "Please." In that moment, looking into her eyes, Mason made his decision, not just as the accidental gladiator or the genetic key, but as someone who had seen enough of the Empire's cruelty to know it needed to end. He placed his hands on the harmony core. Blue energy engulfed him, symbols swirling around his body as the ancient system recognized his genetic signature. Through the pain and disorientation, he could see Leora shouting something, her hands raised toward him as if in benediction or farewell. The last thing Mason saw before consciousness slipped away was the door to the chamber bursting open and Warden Kargath charging through, rage incarnate, only to be stopped in his tracks as waves of blue energy pulsed outward from the core, washing over everything in expanding rings of transformation. The revolution had begun with a simple package delivery, and now it would change the face of an empire. Chapter 5: Star-Drenched Stage. Mason floated in a sea of blue light. Consciousness returned in fragments, disconnected sensations and thoughts swirling like debris after an explosion. He remembered placing his hands on the harmony core, remembered the surge of energy that had engulfed him, remembered Leora's face as the world dissolved into azure radiance. Was he dead? It didn't feel like death. It felt like information, as if his mind had been transformed into pure data, swimming through endless streams of code and memory. "Mason." A voice penetrated the blue void, familiar. "Urgent." "Mason, follow my voice. Your consciousness is fragmenting in the data stream." "Leora." Even here, in this place between places. He recognized her. "What's happening?" he tried to say, though he had no mouth in this realm of light. "The harmony core connected with your genetic signature. But the system has been corrupted. It's pulling you in, trying to assimilate your consciousness as a new processing node." Mason focused, forcing his scattered awareness to coalesce. Gradually, the blue void resolved into a vast digital landscape, a representation of the core's inner workings. And there was Leora, or rather, a version of her. Her consciousness projected into this same virtual space, her form outlined in silver light. "How are you here?" he asked. "I initiated a partial neural link when the core activated," she explained. "It was the only way to guide you through this. But we have little time. Your physical body remains in the chamber, and Kargath's forces are trying to breach the energy barrier the core created around us." As his awareness sharpened, Mason began to perceive the true nature of their situation. They weren't simply inside a computer system. They were interacting with something far more advanced, more alive. The flowing symbols he'd seen on the tablet and chamber walls were here too, forming complex patterns that seemed to constitute a language of pure thought. "This is the true technology of my ancestors," Leora said, sensing his realization. "Not merely machines, but a symbiosis of consciousness and computation. The Harmony Core was designed to connect minds, to foster understanding across species and cultures." Then, how did it become? Mason searched for words. Corrupted, weaponized, twisted into a tool of oppression. Leora's digital form rippled with emotion. "That is what we must now correct. Look." She gestured, and the blue landscape parted to reveal what appeared to be a massive, pulsing crimson structure, embedded within the serene blue architecture, like a tumor within healthy tissue. Within this red nexus, Mason could perceive a consciousness, ancient, cold, calculating. "The Arena Core," Leora explained. 8 generations ago, when the usurpers seized power, they captured one of our most brilliant scientists, Arkath, my ancestor. They forced him to modify the Harmony Core, to create a system that would maintain their control through fear and blood. The Arena Core was born, an artificial intelligence program to ensure stability through selective elimination. Mason understood. The Arena isn't just entertainment. It's population control. Social engineering through blood sport. Precisely. And Warden Kargath isn't truly its master. He's its most favored puppet. The Arena Core selected him, enhanced him, uses him as its primary physical interface with the world. As if summoned by their discussion, the red nexus pulsed violently, and a figure began to form within it, a digital representation of Kargath. His 4 horns, now resembling antennae, connecting to the Arena Core's central mass. "Insurgents detected within primary systems," the digital Kargath announced, his voice overlaid with mechanical harmonics. "Corruption protocol initiated, assimilating foreign consciousness." Tendrils of crimson code lashed out toward Mason and Leora. She reacted instantly, generating a shield of blue light that intercepted the attack. "We must act quickly," she said, strain evident in her voice. "Your genetic signature has partially reactivated the original Harmony protocols. But the Arena Core remains dominant. To restore the system, we need to reach the central nexus and initiate a complete reset." "How do we do that?" Mason asked, instinctively trying to back away from another lash of red energy. "Follow me, and prepare yourself. In this realm, thought becomes reality. Intention becomes action." Leora streaked forward through the digital landscape, her form leaving trails of silver light. Mason focused his will and followed, surprised at how naturally movement came once he stopped thinking in physical terms. Together, they dove deeper into the system, evading the Arena Core's attacks while navigating toward what Leora identified as the central nexus, the point where all systems converged. As they traveled, Mason became aware of the physical consequences of their digital battle. Through brief flashes of connection to his body, he glimpsed the chamber around them, the Harmony Core now a whirling storm of energy. The floor beneath it beginning to crack and shift as gravitational anomalies warped the very structure of the arena above. "The core's power is bleeding into physical space," Leora explained. The gravitational distortions will continue to intensify as long as the system conflict persists. They reached what appeared to be a vast digital chasm, separating them from a shimmering sphere that must be the central nexus. Behind them, the digital Kargath approached, now accompanied by a legion of red constructs resembling the arena's gladiators and guards. "We cannot outfight them in direct confrontation," Leora said. "But perhaps—" She turned to Mason, her digital form pulsing with urgency. "Your human unpredictability. The core cannot anticipate your thought patterns as easily as mine. You must create a bridge." "Create a bridge? How?" "Imagine it. Will it into existence. Your genetic connection to the original system gives you creation privileges that even I lack." Mason focused, trying to visualize a bridge spanning the chasm. But the arena core's forces were closing in, their presence distracting, threatening. "I can't concentrate with them bearing down on us." Leora made a decision. "I'll hold them off. You focus on the bridge." Before he could protest, she turned and flew toward the approaching army, her form expanding, becoming a barrier of light between Mason and the threat. The digital Kargath howled with rage as Leora engaged his forces, her consciousness fragmenting into multiple attack patterns that confused and disrupted the arena core's predictive algorithms. Mason poured everything into his task, visualizing not just any bridge, but a specific one, the Golden Gate Bridge from Earth, a symbol of connection from his homeworld. To his amazement, golden strands of code began to weave themselves across the chasm, forming the structure he envisioned. "Leora!" he called. "It's working!" She disengaged from her defensive position, quickly rejoining him. Behind her, the digital army regrouped, advancing relentlessly. "Go!" she urged. "Cross to the nexus." They raced across the Golden Bridge, the central nexus growing closer. But as they neared the far side, the digital Kargath made a desperate move, targeting not them, but the bridge itself. Crimson spears of code struck the structure, causing it to begin dissolving beneath their feet. Mason leapt the final distance, landing safely on the platform surrounding the nexus. He turned back to see Leora still on the bridge as it collapsed, her digital form faltering, parts of her consciousness beginning to disperse into the void below. "Leora!" Without thinking, he reached out, extending his own consciousness like a lifeline. Their digital forms connected, and with a tremendous effort, he pulled her to safety beside him. The central nexus hovered before them, a perfect sphere of swirling code, both red and blue elements in constant conflict, neither able to fully dominate the other. "This is it," Leora said, her form still unstable from the attack. "The heart of both systems. Here we can reset everything, purge the arena core and restore the harmony protocols." "How?" Leora's expression became solemn. "One of us must merge with the Nexus, become the guiding consciousness that redirects the system's purpose. It requires complete integration." Mason understood immediately. "You mean whoever does this won't be coming back?" Their original consciousness would be transformed, distributed throughout the system. She straightened, resolution evident in her bearing. "It must be me. This is my world, my people's technology, my responsibility." "No," Mason protested. "There has to be another way." The platform shook as digital Kargath and his forces began to manifest new paths across the chasm. "There isn't time for another solution," Leora insisted. "This was always the plan, my plan. Why I needed you specifically." Her form touched his, a sensation like electricity and warmth combined. "Your genetic key opened the door, but only a willing consciousness can redirect the system. This is what I've prepared for my entire life." Before Mason could respond, she turned toward the Nexus, her form already beginning to dissolve into streams of code that reached toward the sphere. "Leora, wait!" Mason lunged forward, grabbing her dissolving form. "You can't just sacrifice yourself!" Her voice came as if from a great distance. "It's not sacrifice if it serves a greater purpose." Parts of her were already merging with the Nexus, blue light overtaking red wherever they connected. "My consciousness will live on in the system, guiding it toward peace rather than bloodshed." "That's not living," Mason argued, still holding what remained of her digital form. "That's just existing, trapped forever." Digital Kargath had nearly reached their platform, roaring with mechanical fury as he sensed his impending obsolescence. Leora's voice weakened as more of her merged with the Nexus. "Then remember me as I was. Mason Clark, the princess who found her courage through a delivery boy's heart." Something snapped inside Mason, a refusal to accept yet another person's life, reduced to an entry in a manifest. A package delivered and forgotten. Not after everything they'd been through. Acting on pure instinct and desperation, he thrust his own consciousness into the Nexus alongside hers. Not to merge completely, but to create a connection, a tether between Leora's dissolving form and his own intact one. "I'm not letting you go," he declared, feeling his own consciousness beginning to fragment under the strain. "Either we both stay, or we both leave." Within the Nexus, their minds touched at a level beyond physical understanding. Mason saw Leora's entire life in an instant, her childhood in the palace, her secret education in the old ways, the moment she discovered her ancestors' records detailing the corruption of the core, her years of careful planning, recruiting allies like Pix, searching for someone with the right genetic markers. And she saw him, not just the delivery man or accidental gladiator, but the essence of who he was, his determination, his adaptability, his fundamental belief that no life should be thrown away. In that moment of perfect understanding, something unexpected happened. The Nexus, receiving input from two compatible consciousnesses, one jar, one human, initiated a protocol so ancient it had been forgotten even in Leora's ancestral records. Consciousness bifurcation. Instead of absorbing either of them completely, the Nexus extracted a copy of each, digital echoes that would remain to guide the system, while preserving their core consciousnesses intact. The physical world crashed back into focus. Mason found himself lying on the chamber floor, the harmony core now a steady, pulsing blue above him. Beside him lay Leora, unconscious, but breathing. Around them, the chamber had been transformed, the ancient technology fully reactivated, displays showing system after system coming back online throughout the complex. And on the ground between them, Warden Kargath, or what remained of him. The once imposing figure lay crumpled, his four horns now lifeless metal, the cybernetic implants that had connected him to the arena core dead and inert. Mason crawled to Leora's side, cradling her head. "Leora, can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, violet irises now containing faint traces of electric blue, the same color Mason would later discover in his own reflection. "We're alive? How?" "I don't know," Mason admitted. "Something in the system changed when we were both connected." Leora sat up slowly, touching her temple where a delicate pattern of blue light traced beneath her skin. "The bifurcation protocol," she whispered in wonder. "A myth, even among my people. Parts of us remain in the system, while we continue in physical form. But we're changed." Mason felt it too, a constant awareness of the technology around them, and more strangely, a faint sense of Leora's thoughts and emotions, as if an echo of their connection in the digital realm persisted. "Tech-bonded," Leora said, reading his confusion. "Our consciousnesses are partially synchronized now. Not telepathy exactly, but A connection. Before they could explore this further, Pix zoomed into the chamber, screen displaying rapid sequences of data. System transformation 87% complete. Arena infrastructure repurposed. Slave control systems deactivated throughout the complex. Revolution proceeding with 63% fewer casualties than projected. The little robot bobbed excitedly around them, then focused on their changed appearance. Detecting neural technical integration. Fascinating development. Not in original plan parameters. Nothing about this mission went according to the original parameters, Leora said, with unexpected warmth, glancing at Mason. The chamber shook as explosions sounded from somewhere above. The physical battle continues, Pix reported. Loyalist forces retreating but still dangerous. Extraction route secure for next 12.4 minutes. As Mason helped Leora to her feet, a question that had been forming in his mind finally crystallized. You said this was always your plan, finding someone with the right genetic markers. But how did you choose me specifically, out of all the humans with this gene? Leora's expression softened. That package you were so determined to deliver? Open it. The diplomatic box that had started everything still lay in the chamber, where Mason had dropped it during the chaos. He picked it up, finding it surprisingly light. Inside was nothing but a small, holographic projector containing a single message. To the courier, brave enough to deliver this to Xeris. Your genetic profile indicates compatibility with ancient Jar technology. The sender requests your assistance in a matter of galactic importance. Return journey guaranteed. Mason looked up in disbelief. You sent this? The package I was delivering was an invitation to myself. I needed someone who would take risks, who would adapt, who wouldn't give up even when faced with impossible odds, Leora explained. The courier database showed your delivery success rate in dangerous territories was unmatched. Your psychological profile suggested a perfect balance of self-preservation and empathy. So, when I thought I accidentally signed up for the arena, there are no accidents, Mason Clark, she said, a smile finally breaking through her warrior's facade. I chose you before you ever set foot on Xeris. I just couldn't tell you until now. The chamber shook again, more violently this time. Time to leave, Pix announced. Structural integrity compromised, grand exit opportunity presenting itself. They made their way through corridors, now transformed by the reactivated ancient technology. What had been stone was revealed as advanced materials, dormant systems springing to life after centuries of suppression. Throughout the complex, freed slaves and resistance fighters were securing control, guided by the reborn Harmony Corps that now supported their efforts. They emerged onto the arena floor, no longer a place of death, but chaos of a different kind. The gravitational anomalies had intensified, creating a massive vortex above the central fighting grounds. Into this swirling portal, the arena's weapons, torture devices, and implements of control were being drawn, disappearing into what Leora explained was a localized space-time compression. The core is disposing of the tools of oppression, she said, raising her voice above the howling wind, compressing them into a singularity that will eventually be ejected into deep space. Across the arena, groups of freed beings were boarding transport vessels that had been seized from the Imperial hangars. The revolution was succeeding beyond even Leora's careful planning, aided by the Harmony Corps' reactivation. A sleek ship landed near them, its ramp extending in invitation. As they approached, Mason noticed something remarkable. The vessel's control systems responded to his thoughts, interfaces activating at his mere attention. The tech bond made him a part of the awakened technology around them. Where do we go now? He asked as they boarded, freed fighters joining them. Leora's eyes met his, the violet and blue in them, shining with possibility. Wherever we choose. The Empire has many worlds still under Arena Corps control. Many people still suffering. A galactic honeymoon tour with a side of revolution, Mason suggested, surprising himself with the lightness he felt despite everything they'd been through. Something like that, Leora agreed, taking his hand. The connection between them pulsed, both physical and digital, both alien and familiar. Though perhaps liberation sounds more dignified than revolution. As their ship rose above the crumbling arena, joining a fleet of vessels carrying newly freed beings of all species, Mason looked back at the planet that had changed him forever. What had begun with a misunderstood form and a package delivery had transformed into something he could never have imagined. He was no longer just Mason Clark, interstellar delivery man. He was part of something larger, a movement, a connection between worlds, and most unexpectedly, a partnership forged in the unlikeliest circumstances. "Next stop?" Pix chirped, hovering between them at the ship's controls. Mason and Leora exchanged a glance, their tech bond humming with shared purpose. "The nearest arena world," they said in unison, as the stars opened before them. Sometimes, the most important deliveries are the ones you make yourself.